Hello and welcome back to the Acceleration Netcast. In the last episode, we took a workbook that had individual sheets that contained information about sugar packet consumption for my lemonade stand empire, and we combined all those sheets into a single table, and that table included which quarter or which sheet it was referring to. Each one of these rows is referring to. In this episode, we actually want to analyze this data. So we've combined the data into a single table, and now we want to do a little bit of analysis on it. More specifically, if we look at this data, what we find is, so for each person per quarter, if they got any sugar packets at all, they have this row associated with all, and the number of sugar packets they consumed. If they bought sugar packets or they use sugar packets as a customer, they've also got a row for customer, and it's got that same number, right? And if they got sugar packets as an employee, there's the third row for employee, and it's got that same number there. So what we're interested in is that customers, when they get sugar packets, if they get more than two, they pay for them. So if they can have all the sugar packets they want, no big deal, because they're paying for it, right? Employees, by contrast, well, if they're getting their drink on their shift, they get a free drink and they get as many sugar packets as they want. So they can, again, have as many as they want, also no big deal. What we're concerned about is that there may be employees who are using their employee discount when they're not working and then sort of collecting a bunch of sugar packets. So we want to see if there's employees that are collecting too many sugar packets. So we could sit down and just have a conversation with them and see if there's a good reason for it or a bad reason, or maybe change our policy a little bit, or see if it's even a problem. So what we want to do is we want to filter down. We only want to get a list of people that have consumed over 500 sugar packets, and we want them to have been both a customer and an employee. If they were just a customer, then they paid for their sugar packets, no big deal. If they were just an employee, well, then they always got them as part of their shift. Again, shift drink, again, no big deal. If they were both, like Nathaniel here, we want to make sure they didn't use more than 500 sugar packets. So with that long-winded introduction, let's get down to business. So we've already got our data here. It's returned as a query. So rather than starting over, I'm just going to reference this query. I'm going to right-click on it and click on Reference. Right. So now we've created a new query which just points to this old query. So now I'm going to right-click on it and hit Edit. Head into Edit mode. I'm going to change the name to, I don't know, let's call this QRI Report Over 500. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. We've already removed the index column, which we're going to need for our next step. The first thing we're going to do is we want to take this attribute column, we actually want to pivot it so that rather than being one column, it's going to turn into 3 columns. And each column is going to have the number of sugar packets consumed in it. So let's click on that, click on Attribute. We're going to head over to Transform, and we're going to click Pivot Columns. Okay, and it wants to know, well, what numeric values would you like to populate these 3 new columns with? Well, it's not quarter. It's going to be sugar packets. So we're going to click OK. So now let's head back to where we were. We've taken this attribute column. We're going to pivot it to create 3 new columns. We're going to create all customer and employee, and it's going to populate that with the number of sugar packets consumed. And so for here, for Ava, if we head back here, she had a row for all and a row for customer. So 21 populates into both of those, but she had no row for employee. See, no employee row there. So when it goes to populate that, it just populates it with a null. So we know that she bought sugar packets in the first place, which is actually not that useful of information. But more importantly, we know that she bought sugar packets as a customer, but not as an employee. So what we want to do next is we want to create a test to see for each person, for each row specifically, whether or not they were a customer and an employee, to see if we need to bother checking if they consumed over 500 sugar packets. So let's go to Add Columns, Add Custom Column. I'm going to call this is employee and customer. Okay, and this test, what we're going to do, it's fairly straightforward. We're going to get the customer value, and we're going to check to see if it's a number. If it's a number, then we're going to return a true. If it's a null, then we'll return a false. Okay, but we don't just want to know if they're a customer. We want to know if they're a customer and an employee. So we're doing and with a D. Employee is number. So we click OK. And now we've got anywhere where they're just a customer or just an employee, we get falses, which is most of these. Anywhere where they were both a customer and an employee, we get a true. So we're only interested in the trues. Let's filter out those falses. Okay. So now we've only got people per quarter that bought stuff both as a customer and as an employee. Okay, now these numbers are all the same, so you could perform this next filter in any of these columns, but what we're interested in now is, well, who bought over, or who consumed more than 500 sugar packets in a quarter? So we're going to click on that guy to get our filtering options, go to number filter, greater than or equal to 500, and we're going to click OK. And so now, just to clean these guys up a little bit, we're sort of almost to our base report. We've got most of the information we need. I'm going to go ahead, and since we only really care about the names and how many they consume, we don't really care about this other stuff. I'm going to go ahead and remove these columns, because this information is there, and this information is not meaningful to a consumer. I'm going to click remove. Okay, we've got their name last first. We don't really need the last and first names here. Leave them in if you want to. I'm going to remove them. I'm going to remove that. Okay, and now we've actually got a pretty good list. I could just go ahead and load this, and it would be just fine. They'd have the list of people that consumed over 500 that were both employees and customers. But what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to pivot again by quarter. So for each person, we could see how many they consumed each quarter. Because I think that's going to be a nice, not a visualization, but it's just a nice way for the consumers to look at the data. So I'm going to click here on the all row. Actually, you know what I'm going to do first is I'm going to rename this from all to... Actually, I guess it's not going to matter because I'm going to pivot on it in a second, but just because I can, I'm going to call this pages, or not pages, sugar packets. There we go. Okay, and now I'm going to click on quarter. We're going to pivot by this and populate that pivot with the sugar packets. So each person is going to get 4 new columns and the number of sugar packets they consumed each column. So let's head to click on quarter. We're going to click pivot column. Okay, we're going to pivot by the quarter column. And where would you like to populate these new columns? We're going to populate it with information from sugar packets, or numbers from sugar packets. So we click OK. And now we've got the person ID, their unique identifier, their name last and first, and all the quarters, and how many sugar packets they consumed each quarter. Just to clean this up even a little further, I'm going ahead and click. I'm going to click on that, shift click on that to select all the columns, and I'm going to replace values. I'm going to replace null or empty with 0. You don't have to do that, but you can. Okay, and now we've got our nice pivot report that is optimized for a consumer. I'm going to click close and load. Load this into a new sheet. All right, well, there we go. I do hope that was helpful, and I will see you next video.